One obstacle when I first started selling silencers, back then we were South Dakota Silencer, then I had North Dakota Silencer, and then I ended up just making it Dakota Silencer. But probably the first question people would sort of bring out when they bought a silencer for the rifle is, how do I get it on there? And it's easy if you have like sort of the traditional sporting rifle AR-15. Typically there's a muzzle brake on there that comes off and then the silencer just screws right on. So that's easy. But the guys that are shooting the bull barrels for varmints or any number of other deer rifles or any other rifle, the question they inevitably had is, how do I put the silencer on there? And honestly, that was a big struggle when I first started, because in this town where we're based, there was only one other place that threaded barrels, and they also sold silencers. So the last thing you want to do is tell all your customers, hey, the best place to get your barrel thread in town is my competitor. Why don't you just take them right over there? So it was tough. It actually created quite a predicament. I found a guy north of here that did brakes, muzzle brakes, and he did a fair amount of threading. He owned a machine. He worked in a machine shop as his day job, and he was a gunsmith that did muzzle brakes on the weekends and nights. So he was a good sort of match for that. Also, I was able to convince other, gun stores that didn't sell silencers to get into doing the threading. And what I told them is, hey, I can refer people exclusively to you to thread, and then there's a win-win. So you'll get a customer in there who probably buys something else, and then I can refer people to someone that I know is reputable, can do a good job, and then not worry about them, buying from you. And the same was true that we don't really sell firearms. So someone else say, hey, I'll refer these people to you, and you can refer them to us because we don't really compete with you. So that's kind of how it started initially. Because the big question always was, where can I get it threaded? It was kind of this unknown, like, where can I get it threaded? As time has evolved, there's been greater demand for threading. So people would call us and say, hey, people you're recommending are out 4 or 5 months, and the person who's doing it's out sick for 4 months after that. Or people would say, hey, this guy's so busy, not even returning my phone calls. And sort of outside of South Dakota, you get complaints of our manufacturer who makes the silencers for us kind of gave us pushback and said, hey, there's some areas of the Midwest that aren't doing a good job threading. And because of that, we're getting a lot of repairs and warranty issues because they weren't threaded properly in the first place. I will give credit to my staff. They're like, we got to get into threading. And I would say that my background and expertise, I'm more into the paperwork side. Being a pharmacist, it's, right pill, right bottle, right doctor, right patient, that type. Same thing with this ATF paperwork, right silencer, right serial number, right paperwork, government entities, the whole. So that's the way my brain was sort of educated or wired. So to get into the barrel threading for me at first was, that's kind of, I don't know if I want to do that. The other hard part with getting into the barrel threading is I knew that if we went in, we'd have to go in full first. Like 100%. And we decided that there really was a market need for having a superior option to do barrel threading. Also to speed up the process so it's more convenient for the customers. And also to ensure that the threads matched exactly to the products we're selling. And so what we did is I hired a full-time gunsmith, and I went out and talked to my manufacturers and said, what is the best machine on the market to thread barrels? If we want to thread barrels in high volume and we want it to be flawless, perfect, what do we need to buy? And basically they referred us to a machine they own. So we bought the same machine they have, and one reason why we did that is because they already had the programs written for the barrel threading. So it's a computerized lathe, and the programming is all they've been using for years, the programming to make sure it matched the suppressor silencers they make. So we basically took those actual coding and then put it into our machines.